Welcome back to the Retail Initiative podcast. Today I want to talk about what is going on in retail in 2025. Because honestly, the amount of messages I'm seeing around how sales are down, even friends reaching out, sharing that sales are down, businesses are hurting. Do you believe the news? One, is that something we should be listening to? Or what does this mean for us? If we're starting to see this and there's this negative market sentiment, what does that mean? And so that's what I want to dig into today. But more importantly, I don't just want to either be the guy who's hey, to ignore all that stuff, just keep a positive attitude, or no, everything's gone to crap. Let's just all quit right now. What I want to do is take a real assessment of what I'm seeing in the retail world right now, what it means for you, but most importantly, how you can actually thrive right now. So I'm going to have some actionable steps for you to take, for you to evaluate your business and see, okay, what do we need to do next? So here's the deal about what I'm seeing in 2025. And I did a ton of research before this, but I'm not going to do this like an academic thing. So I'm not going to go citing all the sources. But here's what I know to be true. One, 2025 is set to be the worst year since the last financial crisis. In 2010 was the last worst year of store closures, both among chains and among independent businesses. More retail businesses will close in 2025 than we have had at any other point since 2010. That is tough news to hear. Foot traffic for brick and mortar stores, malls, shopping centers, those have still not recovered to pre-2020 numbers. Meaning, if you're in a mall or you're in one of those areas, the majority, not all, but the majority of malls have not gotten the same level of traffic that they've gotten. Now, on the other side, there's these other things that are going on that are causing market sentiment to change. On your end, one, shipping costs are increasing. Tariffs are introducing a whole new challenge and fear both in the market and that is impacting retailers. And I'm not going to turn this political on, are those good, are those not good? I'm going to let you decide for yourself on what that is. But we cannot set aside the fact that does have an impact on us. Whether we think this is good in the long term or not, at the end of the day, it does have a very real impact on us today. So challenges exist. Now, there's some good parts of this. One, online sales have continued to grow, both in terms of the percentage of total retail sales, meaning of all dollars pumped into the retail world, what percentage of it is e-commerce. That has continued to grow year over year. We saw it growing year over year up to 2020. It blew up in 2020. And then it has continued to rise at a slow degree, but it has continued to rise significantly. Now, that is driven by two different parts. One is the huge brands. This is Amazon, Shein, Temu, Walmart.com has become a massive player. Between those, that is 60% of all of e-commerce sales combined. With only a few websites, that's 60%. But we have this other side where online sales are continuing to grow as a percentage of sales for retailers, independent retailers. Now, why do I share this stuff? Because I'm not one, and let's surround ourselves with the bad. Now, what I am a fan of is it is good to come up for air sometimes and acknowledge the circumstances. Now, there's some things that I tend to not love here, and what I want to encourage you in. A few months ago, I don't know, I was in the middle of a challenging season, and then I found myself paying attention to all the doom and gloom, and it was affecting me a lot. The beliefs I was building, and it was starting to have an impact on me. And I luckily was able to have a really good conversation with my coach, pulled myself out of that, and I was able to get back to a level-headed spot. So here's where I want to encourage you to go, because I think that there are two extremes we can run to, and they're both not good. One is where we get stuck in the doom and gloom, and we just believe hey, this is the reality, and because the economy is bad, because of tariffs, whatever thing we're blaming, because that exists, I cannot be successful. and we're all down. Like, I know that all of us are down. Like, we're making statements like that. And the reality is here, if we really believe that we have no chance of success, why try? If we really believe that there's no way that we could possibly be successful, that no one can do it, why even try to? We have to believe like there is a path out of this. Now, here's the good news. If you just want to, let's say you want to stay in the doom and gloom. In the last financial crisis, over 80% of businesses made it through. Over 80% of businesses made it through. That means that you just need to not be in the bottom 20% to make it through any financial crisis. So if we're thinking like back in high school, can you make it into the top 80%? That's not big. That's not top 1%. That's not top 5%, top 80%. If you can make it through into the top 80%, you will be fine. So I want you just to keep that in the back of your head. If you're like, am I going to make it out? Statistically, you are. We just need to be in that top 80% if you want to. Now, if you don't, by all means, close your doors. Why not do it now? But at the end of the day, you need to be in the top 80%. So one side of this is we can focus on the doom and gloom. We can believe that there's nothing that we can do and it's going to fail because of these outside circumstances. The other way we can run is we can ignore all of that stuff and we can be like, no, everything's fine. Growth mindset, positive mindset, keep a good attitude. Like, we need to do all of those things. And that is what I call toxic positivity. That is where we would say, hey, all these things may be going on, but I don't care. If I keep a good attitude, if I keep a positive spirit, everything will be fine. And I think that is a toxic trait. I think that is a toxic thing that we can do, to just believe that we'll be fine. And if we believe it, then it will happen. And believe me, I'm woo-woo as all get out. I believe in attraction. But here's what I love is a balanced approach here. And what the balanced approach is able to do is not ignore the outside circumstances and not just want to have a positive approach, but it's to take control. I've recently learned, like, I've thought I was an Enneagram 3 for a long time, the achiever, and I've learned I'm actually an 8. And I'm all about control. And I kind of don't like it, but I think that's a part of being an 8 is I'm not supposed to. Anyway, not going to go down an Enneagram path right now. But what I want to do is take control of the situation. And what this means is we can acknowledge the circumstances. We can acknowledge the challenges and say, those are very real. But then we get to flip and say, but what do I have control over? What things can I control that I can now mitigate against these outside circumstances and create a better path forward? That's what I want for you in 2025. And so what I want to do is talk through, like, within what we can control. There are these outside things that we can't. You cannot single-handedly change the economy. You cannot get rid of tariffs. You cannot do these things. Like, those are going to exist. And so what we need to do is look at what we can. So here's a few steps. There's 5. If you're a note taker, write them down. If you're listening while you're like at the gym or whatever, you might want to come back to these, but it's some concepts and they're pretty simple. Number 1 in this process, identify the actual problem. And what I mean here is a lot of times we have what's called leading indicators and lagging indicators. Lagging indicators is losing weight, right? We lose weight and that is like, hey, great, I'm losing weight. That's awesome. The leading indicator is your diet. It's your exercise routine. It's how often you're making it to the gym. Those are the leading indicators that typically say, hey, if these things are happening, this result follows. So online, it's like we have traffic, our total number of visitors. We have conversion. What percentage of those are buying? We want to evaluate the correct problem. Here's what I want to warn you against is make sure that we are looking at the correct wrong problem. I had someone message me this week saying, hey, can we talk? Our online sales are so far down. We don't know what to do. And I'm like, all right, like, let's get on a call. I'm happy to jam with you about it. And then I got into her Shopify. And when I looked, her online sales were actually up 56%. Her online sales were actually up 56%. Her app sales were down. Her live sales were down. But because this one big number at the top of the screen showed is down, she was attributing the problem to my online sales. What could this have led to? If she identified the problem as my online sales aren't growing, she is going to now say like, okay, well, what strategy we need to change? And she's going to shift all this stuff up on the one channel that's actually working. So for her, it's like, okay, we have a problem with our app. We have a problem with our lives. What's the solution? And here for her, it was like, all right, well, do we want people on the app, or do we want to figure out how do we get those people engaged with the brand elsewhere? With her lives, do you want to keep going live? Is that a part of where you want this business to be in a few years? Or do we want to get them engaged on your site, this channel that's producing better than any other channel? What do we want to do here? Like, what's the actual problem we want to solve? When you identify the correct problem, if you do anything that I'm about to talk about, the most important thing you can do is actually land on this is the correct problem to be solved. When we land on the wrong problem and we say like, this is what has to happen, like this is what the big issue is, but it's not the right one, we're going to end up with the wrong answer because we didn't solve the right question. When you ask better questions, you get better answers. So when we can find out like what's the actual thing that's going on here, my sales are down is not the right one. That is a lagging indicator. We want to start moving upstream a little bit and start to dig into, okay, one, what channel is actually down? Then we want to dig into the next piece. And here I always say, audit the basics. Don't start with ninja stuff yet. Audit, are we doing the basics? That retailer I said that they were down, but turns out their online sales were up. We started to get into their social media. We started to get into their site, into their emails, and we found that a lot of the basics weren't covered. In this situation, they were sending emails to only a very small segment of their list every week, and which means their entire list never heard from them. And they were like, well, we only want to send to active email openers. I'm like, I get that, but everyone else on your list doesn't have the opportunity to become an active email opener. We need to give them that opportunity. That was a small strategic thing that as we dug into it, we were like, hey, we need to be covering our basics here. So first, we want to look at our traffic sources. Is our traffic up or is it down? That's high level, but then let's reverse engineer a step deeper. So when we're looking at our basics, what we want to do is look at our traffic sources and say, okay, which ones are actually down? And then we can start to get into why. Is it traffic from social media is down? Okay, what are the things that could impact that? Is traffic from our ads down? What could be impacting that? Is traffic from our search down? Okay, what could be impacting that? We want to start looking at each traffic source and saying like, hey, which one of these seems to be the bigger problem? Because what we don't want to do is just look at traffic as one big thing and then go hard into trying to solve it when really it's just a single channel problem. We have a retailer that we work with that is crushing it with paid ads, but her traffic from social media was down so much because she had hired a social media manager that was just approaching it in a very different way, and it caused a massive drop in online sales for her. That was a problem, but what ended up happening is it bled over into like, well, ads must be the thing. That's why it's like, no, like your ads are actually crushing it. We need to figure out how do we compensate for the drop in traffic, one, by shifting our social strategy, and two, what do we need to do on the paid side to allow those to compensate? So one, like where's our traffic? And then which channel specifically do we need to work on first? Then we want to get into site conversion. Is our site converting? Is our conversion rate up or down over the previous year? Are there areas where maybe we've gotten lazy? Like, have we not been updating it? Have we not been curating the right collections? Or are we just throwing up a new arrivals banner and hoping for the best? Then I want to get into email. What are we doing in that? Like, one, is it functioning right? Like, is your pop-up actually working? And is it going to the right list? And all of those things. We just want to make sure it's functioning right. Then we want to look at our frequency. Have we declined in how often we're sending, or have we increased too much, which I tend to not believe in, but could that be the thing? How are our open rates? How are our click rates? And dig into just the basics of that data. Now, from here, here's what I say to do. Once you've looked at those pieces, we then want to pick one optimization for each. So let's say it's social media. Let's change, okay, let's start adding CTAs. Let's make sure we're following a content calendar like what we talked about here before around making it more about our customer instead of just posting, here's what's new, here's what's new, here's what's new. Or sometimes like I'll talk to people and I'll look and They've changed how much they post so much. I'm like, you're posting 2 times a week. Of course your traffic is down. Let's look at, okay, what are we doing that's contributing to that? So identify one area to optimize. Same with conversion. Identify one area. Is it something on our product page we need to change? Or is it something on our homepage we need to change? What might that be? But let's just pick one. Same with email. Now with email, I'll say, like, I always recommend start with your open rates. Start with optimizing, like, are people actually opening this? Don't go change everything, because here's the problem when you change everything. When it works, you don't really know why it worked. When it works, you don't know why it works. So I change one thing at a time. I test my subject lines, then I test my actual content and how people are clicking through. After this, we're going to evaluate the data. Are we seeing increases in the areas we're optimizing, or do we need to try something else? We have to be so curious on trying to figure it out until it works. Like, these are all solvable things. So we continue to try until we gain progress in that one area. Then you can identify the next. And that's for the last step, which is repeat. You're going to do this exact same process all over again and dig into one area, like identifying the problem at that point, auditing the basics, choosing one area of optimization per bucket, traffic, conversion, retention, then evaluate results, then repeat. You follow this process, and I can tell you, if you already have the right foundation in place, like if you generally are able to acquire traffic, your system around how you convert visitors into paying customers is there, this will work. So that's my encouragement. This one went super tactical, and I hope it was helpful, because I really do believe, genuinely, I was struggling to say that word. I genuinely believe that retailers are primed to crush it right now. That data may show otherwise, but what I'm seeing is that as we're seeing store closures and all of this thing, we are seeing a consolidation of customers around very talented retailers. And if we only need to make it in the top 80%, I'm confident that if you're the kind of person listening to this, that's you. So if you made it this far, do me a favor, get to @RetailJosh on Instagram, shoot me a DM, and I'm happy to shoot you over some free resources that we have to help you implement a ton of what we talked about today. So shoot me that DM if that's you @RetailJosh, and I'd love to hook you up with some free stuff. Otherwise, thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next week. Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Retail Initiative Podcast. If you want more free resources, trainings, downloads, you can get those at madebycapital.com/podcast. Again, that's madebycapital.com/podcast. And for those of you that are serious and really want to take the success that you've built in your brick and mortar storefront and you want to create that same level of success online, I invite you to schedule a free call with me, at madebycapital.com/schedule, where we'll dig into your business, like where things are now, where you're wanting to go, getting really clear on your goals, and what are the 2 or 3 things that might be standing in the way of getting there. Now, look, if we're a good fit, I'd love to share what that looks like. And if not, my hope is that you leave with clarity on where to focus for you to reach your goals. So again, thanks for tuning in. And as always, leave a review, make sure you're subscribed, and I cannot wait to see you next time.